what's up you guys, the Curious Owl here, and today I'm going to share my thoughts on Ghost Town by Rachel Caine. Ghost Town is book 9 of the Morganville Vampire series. I have done a series of vlogs that have given my more in-depth thoughts to other books in the series, and I will leave links down in the description for you guys to check these out. Ghost Town, though, was my November pick for this series, and so because I actually finished it in the month of November, I wanted to actually put up a separate review of it because this is basically where I've completely gotten caught up on where I want to be in the series. So in Ghost Town, essentially what happens is that Claire and Myrnin, who is one of the oldest vampires in town, are trying to find a way to rebuild the machine that essentially runs the entire town. In the story Fade Out, which is book 7, there is this machine that runs the town that is basically run by this entity named Ada. Ada was a former vampire friend of Myrnin's and lover, and unfortunately she had died, and so he had placed essentially her brain within the machine and it runs the entire town. What the machine does is it does mostly two things. It contains the ability to create these portals within town where within certain places of Morganville there are these portals that allow people to walk through and get to a different point on town that is like way far away. So it's a nice secret way to kind of just travel around, and it is essentially what the founder of the town uses to travel from place to place without really being seen. The second thing that this machine does is it creates a barrier for the town of Morganville itself. Now when people go to leave Morganville, they cross this barrier, and what happens is for those individual people, the town can essentially wipe their memory of having ever been in Morganville or that there were vampires in Morganville, making it so that nobody knows about what this town is and making it completely isolated from the entire rest of the world. When Ada is essentially destroyed in Fade Out, unfortunately, the machine is broken down, and there is a bit of a gap between the rebuilding of that because the next book after Fade Out, Kiss of Death, essentially gives Claire and her friends the ability to leave Morganville for a short period of time, and Ghost Town is when they have returned, and now she's able to start working on rebuilding the actual machine. Unfortunately, what starts to happen is that when Claire and Myrnin actually do rebuild the machine, people start losing their memories. Humans and vampires, and it is a disastrous event that happened. People's memories actually start reverting back 3, sometimes up to 5 years in the past. So people that have recently returned to Morganville think that they're supposed to be in other places, or people who have lost loved ones start to think that their loved ones are still around, and many people, especially the vampires, do not know what is going on, and so people become very violent because of it. And what really sucks for Claire is that, especially since she had moved to Morganville prior to this 3-year benchmark, essentially, people that she has grown to know in Morganville since the last couple years start to forget her, including her best friends and her boyfriend, Caine. So it is very hard for her to deal with that, and she seems to be one of the only people it hasn't really affected, and she has to figure out what's happened and how to stop it. But that proves to be very difficult when then Myrnin starts to actually lose his memory and reverts back to the monster that he was 3 years prior, and so it is a very sticky situation for Claire to be in, and it seems like there is no hope to getting this to work and be fixed. This is one of those stories where I felt like, for one, the writing has just been extensively better since Fade Out, which was book 7. Like, the writing has just really gotten so much better, but this book in particular is the first book that we actually get past 300 pages of the story. With the bind-ups that I had of the other books in the series, each one is a bind-up of 2 books. So the first 8 books are in one large book, and each one was anywhere between 220 to 250 pages depending on the book. Ghost Town, though, is the first one that we see in the series that actually crests 300 pages. The full story of this book, including the ending pages of the track list that Rachel Caine provides that shows the songs that kind of had got her going when it came to writing this novel, is 335. So right off the bat, there is so much more that is brought into the story, and it shows. Like, this is one of those stories where I felt like it was just so well developed and well written, and actually is so much better than so many of the other books. Like, this is not the favorite yet by any means, but it is definitely a close second to Kiss of Death, because this one had everything going for it. The suspense of the story, the fear that was being felt throughout everything, the heartbreak of seeing Claire losing all her friends to this memory problem, the ties that were brought up in other books of this series are being seen again, and they're being expanded on or finished up or whatever. Everything about this I felt just worked so well, considering the kind of platform that Rachel had set up with the other books. And it's just really been amazing to see how Rachel's writing in general has gotten better as each book has gone on. And I feel like Ghost Town is one of those points where you truly see that. Fade Out and Kiss of Death, you start to see it a little bit, but I feel like with Ghost Town, you really get it solidified in your mind that Rachel has really hit her stride with this series. And this is, I feel like, one of the best books other than Kiss of Death. Now, in terms of how this book came out in 2010. So for many people, 2010 was kind of when the big vampire thing had actually been going on. This is a series that has been around since like 2003. So to see that in about 7 years' time, this series has gotten so much better as time's gone on is really indicative of how, not only how the YA paranormal romance kind of stuff has evolved, but I think how Rachel has really gotten a good stride of understanding how people are responding to the different types of writing that are going on, and how she's really been able to adapt well to it. And I have to say, the ending of the story was actually quite bittersweet, because there's something that happens at the very end of the story where you're kind of like really sad about it, but it brings about actually a really good point of the series. Like, it brings up a really important aspect for one of the other characters that we don't really get to see at all. So it's a really good point to see it come up, but the actual event itself is very, very sad, and so it makes it very hard to see it as anything but sad, but it's just kind of one of those really bittersweet moments. So anyway, that is my review of Ghost Town by Rachel Caine. I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars because honestly, like I said, it's really just one of the better books because of the way that Rachel has been able to write going on in this series, and I feel like the story itself has really gotten to a really desperate point. Like, this is, I think, one of the books where we start to see the desperateness of the people of this town and the town itself, and how there is just this real hope clinging to these characters about how to make this town better. And it seems that with everything they try, it just seems to make it worse, but there's still that little bit of hope clinging on to making this town the way that it should be. And I'm excited to see how it goes, because I feel like there's something else that happens very, very soon that really threatens the livelihood of all these people, and that is what brings about the actual changes in this town. Like, Bishop was one turn of the town where things started to change, but there's a whole other villain that comes up later in the series that really changes everything about how this town runs and how it is going to be working, especially when it comes to outsiders that come in. So I'm excited to see how this continues, and I really hope that the books continue to be good, because I feel like this is a really high point in the series, and I'm just very hopeful that it continues to go on an upward slope and does not end up actually crashing and burning like many series tend to do by the end of them. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me in this review. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up. Make sure to check out the vlogs down in the description below if you would like to see more in-depth reviews of the other books of this series, since it has been a while since I've done like an actual sit-down review. The next book that we are actually going to be reading for December is going to be Bite Club. This is book 10 of the series. I was about to say 11, but it's book 10. So we're getting very, very close to the end, as the original series of Morganville has 15 books. There are several novellas and things of that nature kind of within the series, but I am not able to access any of them, unfortunately. But if you know of a way to access any of the novellas that you can find listed on Goodreads, please let me know, because I would love to be able to read them if I can. And if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit the button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye, guys!